I'm going to talk to you about this crazy year. So 2020 is a year that astrologers have been talking about since the 70s at least, because they saw mundane astrologers look at world events, right? And they saw that 2020 was looking a little crazy. And so we kind of have it bookended this year with major planetary conjunctions and aspects happening in January and mid-January. And then in December, we have another major configuration happening. So it kind of sandwiches everything and a lot of crazy stuff in between. So let's talk about it. So the interior wheel of the chart is called the Sibley chart of the United States. And so that's like the birth chart of the United States. And the outer wheel is the transits right now. Today it's October 9th, 2020. But yeah, let's get into it. So in mid-January of 2020, we had a Saturn-Pluto conjunction in the sign Capricorn, and you can see them, they're still together in the second house of the United States. So the second house is about our values, it's our economy, and Saturn is structures. It's in its own sign of Capricorn, right? And Pluto is transformation and power, and it's also in Capricorn. So when Pluto and Saturn conjunct, and they conjuncted at 22 degrees, and if you know anything about numerology, 22 is the master number of the builder, right? That's when they were exact. In January, they were both at 22 degrees. And so this suggests total transformation of governments, politics, corporations. These are the things that are Saturn ruled. And the transformation of our values and our economy. So this is pretty huge. By late January, early February, Jupiter had joined Saturn and Pluto and is still there with them. And Jupiter just gave more juice to that. Jupiter expands anywhere it touches. So it's like an acceleration of that idea that it was time for things to change. In March of 2020, Mars in transit joined those three. And it was mid-March, and that's when they said, okay, shut her down. So that kind of acted like a trigger. That Jupiter-Pluto-Saturn conjunction is opposed to the Mercury of the United States, which is up in the 8th house. Mercury is the way we think, the way we communicate, and it also rules things like the media, which is under some extreme pressure right now, to say the least. I'm going to talk about Mars for a minute. Mars typically spends 6 weeks in any given sign. But this year, because it's crazy, Mars is going to spend 6 months in Aries, and right now it's retrograde. It went retrograde about a month ago, and it doesn't go direct again until mid-November. When we say a planet's retrograde, it just means it's closer to the Earth and the energy is more palpable, right? It went into Aries at the end of June, and then at the end of July, it got into the late degrees of Aries and started squaring or making a challenging aspect to that Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, and also squaring Mercury. So it's this tense aspect that's called a T-square. And Mars square Jupiter is just a lot of energy. Mars square Saturn is force meets resistance. force, Mars, resistance, Saturn. And Mars square Pluto is an extremely kind of violent aspect. You know, it's force meets power. Okay? So we're seeing violence. We're seeing protests where there's a lot of anger in the energy, in the air. And there's a lot of arguing. You know, Mars is also square Mercury. So people aren't really getting along so well. And hopefully that will settle down. Mars is going to stay in Aries because of this retrograde period, the 6-month thing. It gets out in January. So that will pass. But that's what's going on right now. Let's see what else we got. Also, we're in the Pluto return period. Now, Pluto, the cycle of Pluto is 248 years. So this is our first Pluto return. How exciting. So this was a time in history when the United States was always going to transform. So we can talk about political figures or whatever, but like they're just players on the field. We were going to transform, and the transformation is total and complete. So we're not going back. This is really a let go or be dragged situation where our government structures, our financial structures, everything is going to change. That Pluto return will be exact in 2023. Let me look. Let me check. I don't want to say the wrong thing. February of 22, I'm sorry, is when that will be exact. So, but we can feel it already. In astrology, there's a thing known as orbs. You know, how close does it have to get before you feel it? The farther out the planet is, and Pluto's the farthest, the slower it moves. And again, it's a 248-year cycle. So we're totally in it. We're in it, and we will be in it, because this is a process that's going to take a while. And that's in Capricorn, which, you know, tends toward conservatism. But it's saying, you know, we need to break it up. We need to loosen up. We need to get ready for some change, because that change is coming. Neptune also, and Neptune is the one down in the outer wheel. It's in the 3rd house, in the inner wheel, or in the chart of the United States, it's in the 9th house. And so we have a Neptune opposition coming as well. And we're in the middle of that, but it'll be exact. Let me look. I should have memorized. In April of 21. So, you know, Neptune rules things like viruses. But this is the United States chart, and, you know, the virus is all over the world. But for us, you know, we're having the opposition. We're feeling it particularly strongly as a time to reassess ourselves, I think, on a spiritual level. You know, what's important to us, really. And it does feel a little bit like wipeout, because what we considered normal, which is not really a thing, it's a setting on the dryer, right? Is no longer holds. And we have to decide, you know, what's more important to us, what's the most important to us. And we just have to reevaluate our lives. That Mars in transit that's squaring everything, it's in our 4th house. And in the 4th house, in a mundane chart, or a world event chart, or a country's chart, is the land. You know, it's home, and we've got strife there, because that Mars is in Aries, which is its own sign, and it's a fire sign, and it's squaring Pluto, which is in an earth sign, and Saturn, which is in an earth sign, and, you know, the whole West Coast is on fire. I don't know if you noticed. And we've got a lot of infighting and a lot of division in the United States right now. Let's see, Uranus is in the 5th house. The 5th house is what we do for amusement. You know, do we go to a football game? Uranus is all about change. And so we're going to have to change how we do amusements, how we do the theater, how we do games. And it's there. In 2023, Uranus will move into the 6th house. And I think that's a time when you'll see some changes around maybe healthcare. I think they're talking about, on both sides, talking about doing something about healthcare. And then it'll have its return, the Uranus return, when Uranus joins Uranus in the 6th house. That'll be in 2027. In Gemini, I think you're just going to see a technology explosion. Absolutely. Pluto entered, I'm going to go back to Pluto for a minute. It entered Capricorn back in 2008. So Pluto, the sign of transformation, or the planet of transformation, entered the sign of, you know, governments or structures, all that stuff in 2008. We had a collapse at the time. We elected our first black president. There was some transformation around government at that time. And then Uranus entered the earth sign Taurus back in 2018, 2017, and 2018. And, you know, Taurus rules naturally the 2nd house, and it's about money, and it's about the earth. So, you know, the suggestion there with Uranus in Taurus and an earth sign, and Pluto in Capricorn, also an earth sign, is, you know, earth events, you know, earthquakes, hurricanes, all those things, because the earth is changing. There's changes going on around that. What else did I want to say about that? Crazy changes. The progressed moon, which is not in this, in your own chart, in a personal chart, your moon is in a certain sign, it's in a certain house. Every 2.5 years, though, from the time you were born, it has progressed through another sign, another house. So the progressed moon for the United States for the last 2.5 years has been in Capricorn. And the moon represents the people, and it represents our emotional nature. So the moon's not happy in Capricorn. So it's been in that sign for 2.5 years, which kind of is depressing with all this anger and everything else. Well, on October 30th of this year, the moon is finally going to progress into Aquarius. So that should lighten us up a little bit. But it's that feeling of like we're going forward, we're moving forward. You know, Aquarius is progressive. We're moving forward. So this feeling of being stuck in a rut, that could start to lighten up. And then December 21st, we have what's called the Grand Conjunction, and that is the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, and it's in 0 degrees of Aquarius, right? So both of those planets will get out of Capricorn, will get out of this Pluto situation, and move into Aquarius and move away from that action, and that should lighten us up a bit as well. So the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, it happens every 20 years. And it shows us areas that we need to work on. It's hard work, but there's rewards if you do the work, right? So it happens every 20 years. But here's the thing, for the last 200 years, every time Jupiter is, with one exception, every time Jupiter and Saturn have conjuncted, they have done it in Earth signs. This is Jupiter and Saturn moving into air, which it hasn't been in air for 800 years. So it's a huge shift. It's a huge new world we're walking into. A lot of astrologers believe that this is the true beginning of the age of Aquarius that they were singing about in the 60s, but it's finally here. So we're moving out of kind of old traditional energies, Capricorn, into Aquarius, which is new, forward thinking. And since we've been doing these Earth conjunctions for the last 200 years, it's been about materialism, it's been about accumulation, who has the biggest house, who has the nicest car, kind of the rat race energy. We're moving into air, which is about relationships, connections, technology, new ideas. I think you will see more ecologically sound technological developments, things like that. So that's where we're going. We're headed into a new world. Let go or be dragged is really in play here. So it's pretty exciting. So again, the progress moon, which has been in Capricorn for the last 2.5 years, has been rocking over that Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto thing as well. And it's been an emotional roller coaster, hasn't it, this entire year. But yeah, that's coming out the end of October, going into Aquarius. And then in December, Jupiter and Saturn go into Aquarius. And Saturn says, do the work that you need to do to make these changes. And Jupiter says, you will be rewarded for that. So, it looks like the next couple of years are going to be a lot of changes, a lot of work, but it'll be well worth it. But we're not going back to normal. It's not going to happen. Okay. Much love. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.